The Mariners just signed AJ Pollock to a 1-year, $7 million deal to platoon with Jared Kelenic out in left field. One of the big moves we've been waiting for the Mariners to make this offseason. But where does that leave them with the rest of this offseason? What is there left to do for the Mariners in the 2022-2023 offseason? Well, we have some thoughts.
One of those big concerns that we still have for the Mariners is how we're going to give Ty France a day off. Now, Kolten, you have someone that you touched on in a previous video that you want to continue on with this right now. Who would that be?
So Brandon Belt is someone that the Mariners have been looking at for a while from previous reports. He is going...
Hello, I'm editing this video currently right now, and obviously you guys know that Brandon Belt has signed with the Toronto Blue Jays for 1 year, $9.3 million. So this is all scrapped because we recorded this 2 days ago. Brandon Belt signed yesterday, and today, as of recording, the Mariners signed first baseman and third baseman Colin Moran to a minor league deal with an invite to spring training. Obviously, Colin Moran was last on the Cincinnati Reds. He had his heyday with the Pittsburgh Pirates. In 2020, during that shortened season, Colin Moran had a really good season for just 52 games. Had 10 home runs, drove in 23 RBIs, had his highest career OPS plus of 114 in a season where, there was a lot of weird stuff going on, but Colin Moran nonetheless was able to hit the ball. And the year before that, in 2019, he had 13 home runs and drove in 80 RBIs for a Pittsburgh Pirates team that was probably not very good because, well, the Pirates haven't been very good for a while. He only had a 96 OPS plus in that year. However, his percentiles in those years were actually pretty good. Decent exit velocity. He got good barrel percentage on the ball. So overall, if Colin Moran can give Ty France a day off, he's not guaranteed to even be on the Major League roster at this point. But with an invite to spring training, you can only kind of imagine where this might be going with a player of Colin Moran's Major League status. Obviously, Evan White is still kind of lingering in the balance. He's kind of in limbo with the Seattle Mariners, so we're not really sure. But the free agent need for a first baseman, corner infielder guy seemingly has been filled by Colin Moran, but we've got a trade coming up right now that I think may work. Might need to throw in a little bit more for what we receive, but let's show you that. Obviously, Chris Flexen has been a constant trade piece that we've been throwing around the entire offseason. But for the Rockies here, they've expressed interest in the past. Now, we're not getting any real Major League ready talent, but we're going to seek two kind of bang for your buck prospects from the Colorado Rockies. We're going to start with Nolan Jones as the first player we're asking for. He is their number 10 ranked prospect. Obviously, he was with the Guardians previous to this, and he was a very highly touted power hitting, left-handed hitting outfielder. So it doesn't really fit into the scheme right now, but the player that does, that would be able to give Ty France a day off, is Michael Toglia. Their most Major League ready first baseman, played a good amount of games for them in 2022 at the Major League level. He played in 31 games and had 111 at-bats. He hit 2 home runs and drove in 12 RBIs, so very, negligible stuff there. He slashed 216, 275, 378, and 653, but he did tear it up at AAA. Michael Toglia is a guy that is a bit more ready than I feel like Evan White would be to give Ty France a day off, and that's who we got coming back to us in a Chris Flexen trade to the Rockies. Now, just like trading Chris Flexen has been a hot discussion for Mariners fans across the entire offseason here, another trade that has been very, very talked about is Bryan Reynolds. Kolten, what do we got on the acquisition of Bryan Reynolds for the Seattle Mariners? Where do we stand with that?
Well, obviously, we've seen a lot of different trade packages that we have sent for Reynolds over the past few months, but there is some new light about Bryan Reynolds that we need to talk about. First and foremost, the Mariners still could trade for Bryan Reynolds. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they want to trade for Bryan Reynolds even after the acquisition of Pollock. Pollock should in no way, shape, or form change that. Of course, you can still put Bryan Reynolds in left field. Pollock can DH for you on some days against lefties if you need him to, with Bryan Reynolds being the main left fielder. So I don't think the Mariners are taken out of it, but I think the need for Bryan Reynolds is a lot less than it used to be. With that being said, however, there was a report recently about an extension that Bryan Reynolds turned down and what he wants instead. On January 6th, it was reported that Bryan Reynolds turned down a 6-year extension worth $75 million. This was reported on by everyone's favorite reporter, John Heyman.
Now, 6 years, 75 seems like just an outlandish deal for someone of Bryan Reynolds' caliber. What were the Pirates thinking, even trying to offer that to him? Kolten, what is the realistic extension for Bryan Reynolds? What is what he's seeking out?
So apparently Bryan Reynolds is seeking an 8-year, $168 million deal that Matt Olson got with the Braves last spring. That comes out to about $21 million a year, which for the kind of player that Bryan Reynolds has been, I think that is probably right around where you would want to sign him for. I think $20 million is probably right where I would offer somebody like Bryan Reynolds. I don't know about the 8 years though. 8 years is quite a long time, and I would maybe offer him like a 5 or a 6 year deal. But with that being said, the Mariners could try to get Bryan Reynolds and offer him that contract, but they also should try extending a few other players on the team as well.
Now, Kolten, you lightly touched on Teoscar Hernandez's contract extension potential the other day in a video. Any more on that, or how you're feeling about that, or where do we still stand with Teoscar Hernandez?
As far as I know, still nothing has come out about that. We are transitioning into next week, so we should start to hear talks about that. The arbitration deadline is in just a few days, so there is a good chance that the Mariners and Teoscar Hernandez finally start talking about this extension before or after they exchange numbers for the arbitration hearing. With that being said, is a extension with Teoscar Hernandez imminent? Absolutely not. There's still no 100% chance this is going to get done. The Mariners can certainly see how he plays in a Mariners uniform before extending him, and Teoscar might want to try the open market.
Now, a player that we have seen perform in a Mariners uniform over the last couple years has been first baseman Ty France. Ty is a player that you and I have both talked about, in some sort of conversation, that we would like to see them work on an extension. And I don't really know what it's going to be fully looking like. So can you shed some light on what you think Ty France might get in a Mariners contract extension?
So for Ty France, I think that you don't need to extend him right now. I think that we could wait. Well, obviously, we have a couple more years to extend Ty France before he's a free agent. So we could see where he's at the end of 2023, maybe even mid-2023. But if the Mariners did want to start those extension talks now to kind of get the money settled, I think that somewhere in the $15 million to $18 million range would probably work out for Ty France. I think maybe a 5-year deal, maybe worth $75 million up to $90 million would be good for someone like Ty France, the all-star first baseman for the Mariners. He is the mainstay. He is who the Mariners are going to be building around at first base. Evan White, that ship has sailed. Maybe he could be a good backup for Ty France. But with that being said, a 5-year, $75 million base salary for Ty France is what I'd be looking for. Of course, I can see that going up to $90 million.
Now, obviously, we don't want to lowball these players like other franchises have done with their star players to make them a bit more disgruntled and less willing to sign extensions. This is what caused Bryan Reynolds to request a trade. Mookie Betts got traded because of this. Xander Bogaerts is now a San Diego Padre. Luckily for the Red Sox, Rafael Devers worked out their contract, but obviously, like you're saying, starting at $15.75 seems like it's close, but obviously being willing to work up to that $18 million a year, that $90 million mark over 5 years, probably be something that Ty France and his camp would seek out.
So we covered a couple things in this video that we want the Mariners to do, and we still think they have some room to do this offseason. And of course, we did talk about Teoscar Hernandez as well as a Bryan Reynolds trade in one of these two videos down here. Pick your own adventure and watch one of those videos. We appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.